In today's discussion, we delve into the fascinating world of ancient Greek pronunciation conventions, where we explore the challenges posed by current models, such as modern Greek, Erasmian, Koine Era, and classical Attic. We'll uncover the limitations and strengths of each approach and the impact they have on our understanding and connection with ancient Greek. I'll also introduce you to the Lucian pronunciation, a revolutionary system developed by Luc Ranieri, which aims to address the shortcomings of existing models. Join me as I explore the motivations that drive scholars and enthusiasts to venture beyond mere historical accuracy and embrace the nuances of pronunciation in ancient Greek through the framework of science, art, pedagogy, and politics. Well, welcome to this edition of Sneaky Greeky. I'm Jonathan, and today we're going to be discussing the problem with current pronunciation conventions of ancient Greek. When you step into the realm of ancient Greek, one of the things you discover is this captivating tale of pronunciation conventions. It's really a journey through time as we encounter a multitude of approaches, from modern Greek to Koine Era pronunciation to the ubiquitous and yet clumsy reverberation of the Erasmian tradition, to the meticulous restoration of classical Attic's golden age. It's really quite a labyrinth, and it's a journey worth exploring, especially if you're a serious student of ancient Greek. When I first learned Greek, I learned Greek through what's called the grammar translation approach. And that particular approach to learning Greek is heavy in the academy. You sit down with a textbook, you learn the grammar, you learn the rules of grammar, and you decode and encode. You learn how to parse words, you learn how to decline nouns, you learn syntax, the rules of grammar, and it is a very mechanical system of which you are going through the intricacies of the language. It's not particularly helpful for achieving fluency. And in that particular model, the primary pronunciation that is given for students to learn is the Erasmian pronunciation. It's what is taught in the academy, and it is not only for biblical studies, but also the Academy for Classical Studies. And so I learned academic Erasmian pronunciation, and only later did I discover a living language approach to studying ancient Greek. And with that came better approaches to pronunciation. And the end result, I think, is a more beautiful and actually more historically accurate understanding of the language, which I do want to commend to you. So what I want to do in this episode is I want to overview each of the major models for pronunciation and talk about their strengths and their weaknesses. And after giving an appraisal, I'll conclude with some summary thoughts to help you on your own journey. So let's just begin with talking about modern Greek pronunciation. Modern Greek speakers use a pronunciation of Greek which treats the letters of ancient Greek in the same way that they treat them in modern Greek. But a problem arises when words with entirely different meanings and spellings sound identical. And this is because modern Greek utilizes the same sound for multiple letters and combinations of letters. And one of the problems with modern Greek pronunciation is what's called homophonous pronunciation, where words or phrases that have different meanings and spellings are pronounced in the same way or have a similar sound. It's a phenomenon where different words or expressions sound the same when spoken. A classic example of this is to compare the words for we and you plural in Greek. And the words in Erasmian are pronounced hemes and humes, respectively. But in modern Greek are pronounced exactly the same, emis. And this can lead to barriers in communication, especially when dealing with languages that have variations in pronunciation conventions. So here's the deal. So take, for example, the words in Erasmian, hemes and humes. There's just a couple of many others that we could use for examples. But what happens is when these words merge in pronunciation, it put it puts folks who don't use historical Greek pronunciation in a bit of a bind. They got to start reconfiguring their sentences, adding extra words, or even swapping out common sayings that don't match up with the written norms. And for this reason, there's a strong rationale behind adopting a historical pronunciation for ancient languages. I mean, if our primary objective is to enhance intuitive literacy and to foster a profound connection with the authors of antiquity, then by employing a historical pronunciation, we're able to immerse ourselves in a language more authentically, facilitating a deeper understanding of its nuances. And this deliberate approach allows us to forge a meaningful bond with a written word, bridging the gap between the Hellenistic period and today, or between the classical period and the Hellenistic period, or between the Hellenistic period and classical period and today. However, for those who are comfortable handling the confusion of using homophonous pronunciation that sounds the same for different words with entirely different meanings, then we could say modern Greek pronunciation is a perfectly reasonable choice. Modern Greek speakers are able to intuit the differences because they're native speakers. But the problem is students that are just learning Greek will really struggle with this. Erasmian pronunciation. This is a system of pronunciation that takes its name from Erasmus of Rotterdam and encompasses a range of systems employed inconsistently in various countries outside of Greece. It originated in the 16th century when Erasmus speculated about the phonetic qualities of ancient Greek and how they might have differed from the Greek spoken during his time. However, the Erasmian convention itself is rather disorderly and lacking in coherence. One of the primary concerns that I have regarding the Erasmian pronunciation is its purported goal of accurately reconstructing the ancient language. However, it only represents a partial restoration and incorporates imbalanced conventions that have limited linguistic rationale. It just doesn't make sense. As a result, it falls short of reflecting the advancements made in philological science over the past 5 centuries. Moreover, I would say the Erasmian pronunciation poses several other challenges in terms of pedagogy, particularly in developing a deep appreciation for ancient Greek literature. Most notably, it fails to adequately distinguish between long and short phonemic vowels, which are essential for conveying distinct meanings and differentiating between words. And this deficiency becomes particularly problematic since vowel length lies at the heart of ancient Greek, and it's indispensable for fully understanding the poetry and the prose of classical and Hellenistic Greek. Another issue with the Erasmian system lies with its unequal treatment of vowel and consonant qualities. Erasmus introduced the diphthong epsilon iota, which he pronounced A, to represent a digraph. Because historically, epsilon iota has always been a digraph and not a diphthong. For example, Sidney Allen, in his excellent work, Vox Graeca, points out that epsilon iota, he says, is, quote, at all times from the 5th century BC to the present era, a monophthong. And he's right. There are further criticisms that we could level against Erasmian pronunciation, particularly regarding its inconsistent usage across different countries and its disregard for the crucial characteristic of pitch accent, which remained active at least until the end of the Western Roman Empire, among other deficiencies. So in essence, the Erasmian system fails fundamentally to fulfill its intended objective for two reasons. First, its purported historical basis is undermined by an anachronistic philological framework. And secondly, its practical implementation leads to additional confusions, such as English speakers merging epsilon iota uh, as an eta, this sound. This is, certainly no better than the semantic confusion that we encounter right in the modern pronunciation when we end up with homophonous sounds. And this challenge of modern Greek is replicated in Erasmian pronunciation with things like epsilon iota. So then we move to the Koine era. We enter into the discussion Dr. Randall Booth, who proposed a compromise with his Koine era pronunciation of Greek. Now, if you want to listen to examples of Koine era pronunciation, there's probably no better way to do it than go to koinegreek.com, where Benjamin Cantor, who is an excellent Hellenist, uh, pro- produces some really phenomenal audio of what Koine era pronunciation sounds like. And this is a system that addresses some of the concerns raised about both the Erasmian approach and the modern Greek approach. By drawing on extensive evidence, what Randall Booth did was he looked at spelling errors found in Egyptian papyri and sought to recreate the sound of Greek during the late Koine period. And by looking at misspellings, they were able to discern the way the language would have sounded if the same words are being misspelled the same way over and over again. It gives us a clue as to how it may have sounded when scribes would be writing in manuscripts the sound of words while misspelling those words themselves. So while Koine era pronunciation has historical support, it certainly represents the sound of at least some Greek speakers during a specific historical period. I think we could say it's unlikely to account for the entire range of Greek speakers during the Hellenistic era. For example, we have direct testimonies from living grammarians such as Cicero, Quintilian, and others who describe the sound of contemporary Greek in their respective centuries and acknowledge variations according to dialect. It's not like these guys discussed Greek pronunciation in some uniformed or idealized manner that encompassed all speakers. There was an understanding that there were variations in dialect. And so in this regard, I think the Koine era pronunciation certainly is an elegant system. It is a reconstruction that is superior to anything that Erasmian can produce. It certainly prevailed during the Byzantine Greek period, but since it closely resembles modern Greek, it's unlikely to me that it represents the majority of Greek speakers during the early Roman Empire. Additionally, I would say that the Koine era pronunciation overlooks phonemic vowel length, which that is the distinction between short and long vowels. It also overlooks pitch accent, which is the use of pitch or tone to emphasize specific syllables, and it overlooks geminated consonants, which are consonant sounds produced with an extended duration compared to a single consonant sound. And so in this way, it shares features with modern Greek pronunciation. And that's why when you listen to it, it sounds more modern than it does Erasmian. So that's the Koine era pronunciation. Now, when we move to classical Attic pronunciation, sometimes called classical restored pronunciation, this model is a wonderful choice, and I do utilize it in my videos, for example, through Atenazde. However, it also has limitations. While it's a suitable system for a significant portion of Hellenistic literature, particularly because it retains these essential elements like phonemic vowel length, pitch accent, and geminated consonants that are crucial for ancient Greek, it introduces some sounds that sound unfamiliar both to modern Greek speakers and speakers of those who have learned Erasmian pronunciation. And as a result, it's not been a popular choice for Greek pedagogy. And I think herein lies the challenge really of practicality. When one learns ancient Greek, whether they're focusing on Koine or Attic, it remains the same language. albeit with some nuances. And eventually, students of one style will encounter text from the other. And so, if learning any language is challenging enough, especially when it's an ancient language like Greek with lots of complexities. And when you add to that the intricacies of multiple sound systems, it ends up being counterproductive for beginners and provides only marginal benefit for advanced readers. This is why non historical pronunciations like Erasmian and modern Greek, despite their limitations, are perfectly valid methods to learn and teach the language. They do allow learners to achieve the fundamental ability to read consistently and fluently, which is, of course, the core objective. So here's the problem. The lack of compatibility between Erasmian, modern Greek, Koine Era, and classical Attic pronunciations lead to confusion, particularly in a group setting where individuals may be using different systems simultaneously. I mean, I've been in classroom situations where you're hearing two or three, even four different models of pronunciation, and it's just confusing, especially to students who are just learning the language. And this confusion is completely unnecessary, and it ends up hindering effective communication and collaboration. In a group setting, it's important to establish a consistent pronunciation system to ensure clarity and understanding among students. And while each pronunciation model has its merits, attempting to combine them in a real time dialogue results in a tangled web of conflicting sounds, and it hinders productive interactions. And to avoid such confusion, I think it's advisable to choose a single pronunciation model that best suits the context and the goals of the group. And this allows for a unified approach to language learning, fostering a more cohesive and efficient learning environment. And so, by establishing a shared pronunciation system, participants can focus on, mutual understanding, and they can progress in their language studies with much greater ease. Well, let me insert here then Luc Ranieri and his Lucian pronunciation. So, in light of the challenges posed by the existing models that I've just articulated, scholars like Luc Ranieri have been motivated to develop a convention that addresses these limitations. So, Luc and his colleague sought to find a system of sounds that is historically substantiated and yet grants access to the entirety of ancient Greek literature. And so that pursuit led to the development of the Lucian pronunciation of ancient Greek, which satisfies for them a set of criteria influencing the choice of pronunciation for ancient language. And the criteria that they developed encompasses the realms of four categories: science, art, pedagogy, and politics. I think that's a helpful grid. By subjecting a pronunciation model to these tests, they argue that you can determine the suitability and effectiveness of a pronunciation. And so the detailed analysis of these criteria can be found in a reference paper, which I'm going to post in the comment section under this video, a paper that Luc has written on this subject. I'll provide a link to that, and also a link to his YouTube video where he articulates the Lucian pronunciation. So if you want to learn that, you can follow this video up with that and listen to his full analysis of that. So let's look at this criteria then that Luc and his colleague have put together regarding pronunciation models, and try to get a sense as to some of the strengths and weaknesses. So first, we look at modern pronunciation along these four criteria. In terms of science, while modern Greek pronunciation may not be historical, it does employ a phonetic system that aligns with an internationally recognized form of Greek. I mean, this is what modern Greek speakers speak with, and so it is a recognizable form. From an artistic perspective, then, modern Greek is aesthetically pleasing. It's pleasant to listen to. It makes sense. It's uniform. And regarding pedagogy, the main concern with modern Greek is that it's heavy in its semantic load. So students are faced with a challenge of distinguishing words and meanings, especially when confronted with significant learning curve due to the homophonous nature of the pronunciation. On the subject of politics, the situation is particularly intense because Greek speakers are fiercely protective of their heritage, and they often view attempts to reconstruct it as hostile, and they don't take to that very well. So it's important to consider these factors when evaluating different pronunciation models for ancient Greek, as they have implications for science, they have implications for aesthetic appreciation, effective language instruction, and the socio-cultural dynamics surrounding the language. So then when we move to Erasmian pronunciation in ancient Greek, it's often regarded as a historical reconstruction, but in reality, I would say it's really the opposite. In terms of art, Erasmian pronunciation exhibits significant variation among speakers, and I personally find it rather grating. It's aesthetically displeasing due to its claim of being historical reconstruction, while failing to really fulfill its very purpose. And it sounds contrived, it also sounds inauthentic. Regarding pedagogy, Erasmian pronunciation has demonstrated a certain utility in the classroom, which is great, but its main drawback is the absence of phonemic vowel length, which is a significant feature of ancient Greek. It just cannot be overlooked. And when it comes to politics, there's a complex interplay happening. Many classicists hold a certain level of disdain toward modern Greek. You know, you think about these folks in the academy, they read classical texts and they do not utilize a modern Greek pronunciation, and there's this rift. And these tensions often surface in online debates about correct, pronunciation. And at the same time, modern Greek speakers, they don't accept Erasmian system, and they consider it to be anachronistic in nature, since it's a blend of partially restored phonetics, and it's understandable why they would reject it. So you have this conflict between modern Greek speakers and classicists who utilize an Erasmian pronunciation. Then we come to Koine Era pronunciation. If you look at it scientifically, the Koine Era pronunciation model developed by Dr. Booth, it does utilize well-curated data from the Koine period, particularly through the analysis of spelling errors. And this scientific approach provides solid evidence to support its phonetic choices. By incorporating those elements, the Koine Era pronunciation model becomes more consistent with the language as it existed during the Hellenistic period. When you think about art, the rendition of Koine Era pronunciation by someone like Ben Cantor showcases its beauty. It demonstrates a remarkable fluency. However, to align with its intended historical period, it would be ideal to include features such as palatalization of velars before front vowels and retracted s's, similar to modern Greek. I think these additions would bring even more consistency to the system. When it comes to pedagogy, Koine Era pronunciation sets itself apart from Erasmian in that it utilizes all six fricatives in Greek. So chi, gamma, theta, delta, phi, and beta, just like in modern Greek. And this makes it equally accessible for learning and using the system, despite its differences from Erasmian. It also merges certain sounds, such as epsilon, upsilon, gives the sound ev, and alpha upsilon gives the sound av, aligning with modern Greek. And these challenges, they do increase the complexity for the learner, in that they are looking at individual phonemes compared to classical Attic or well-pronounced Erasmian. But overall, it serves its purpose in the classroom and can be a very helpful system. On the political side, in terms of politics, Koine Era pronunciation has gained support in biblical scholarship, I think largely replacing Erasmian as a dominant model in many cases. But the association has sometimes led to the perception that it's a lesser form of Greek, as classicists primarily focus on pre biblical literature and they do not prioritize Koine literature. Greek is a language that degrades over time. And because of this degradation, uh, Koine Greek is considered to be, in some senses, a more vulgar form of Greek, and therefore classicist, and those who are focused on biblical scholarship sometimes find themselves in conflict. And so, this preference for Erasmian, despite its historical inaccuracies, creates this divide, right, between classicists and those who choose Koine Era pronunciation. This division between academics of classical language and biblical specialists based on pronunciation, it's unfortunate, and it limits the potential for greater unity in the study of ancient Greek. And I think we would do well to try to end some of these squabbles. Then, when we come to classical reconstructed pronunciation, we look at it from a scientific standpoint. The classical reconstructed model is applicable to at least the 5th century BC and potentially even to the 4th century. And it offers a scientifically grounded approach again to pronunciation. From an artistic standpoint, when classical reconstructed pronunciation is performed well, particularly by modern Greek speakers like Ioannis Strakis, it sounds authentically Greek. It's beautiful. However, despite the precision and the style of such performances, it seems that there's a limited interest among Greeks in adopting this pronunciation, and it has not gained a whole lot of traction. In terms of pedagogy, the teaching aspect of classical pronunciation also poses a challenge. Very few learners of ancient Greek speak a mother tongue that includes phonemically aspirated consonants, while some Germanic languages, I mean, even including English, have allophonic aspirated voiceless occlusives. They occur in specific environments. For example, word initial or before stressed syllables. And the presence of aspirated consonants in classical pronunciation can be difficult for learners to master. When you look at it from a political standpoint, as mentioned earlier, the adoption of 5th century BC phonology by Greeks themselves is uncommon. And this may be due to the difficulty associated with the pronunciation, even for modern speakers, and it may play a role in its limited acceptance as a model. So at this point, as I said earlier, you may be interested in learning about the Lucian pronunciation as a potential fix for the challenges stated. So I've included a link to Luke Ranieri's YouTube video unpacking that system if you want to consider it. For me, I've chosen to adopt the Koine Era pronunciation for the bulk of my reading and speaking, and a classical restored pronunciation for specific non-Hellenistic texts. And that's kind of where I'm at the moment. So in conclusion, let me just highlight, a few things that I think are important when considering what model to adopt, whether you're thinking about it in terms of teaching or whether you're thinking about it in terms of your own use. And I think these things are worth considering. First, accessibility. Obviously one important factor in choosing a pronunciation model is its accessibility to a wide range of learners. Different conventions may be more or less challenging for learners coming from different linguistic backgrounds, but if the goal of language instruction is to make the learning process as smooth as possible, then choosing a system that aligns with learners' linguistic abilities can facilitate that. Secondly, is just thinking about scholarly consensus. When you're thinking about scholarly consensus, this is another consideration is among scholars and experts in the field. While there may be multiple pronunciation conventions available, it's valuable to take into account the preferences and recommendations of established scholars who have dedicated their entire careers to studying and understanding the ancient language. Their expertise can provide guidance and credibility to a particular pronunciation model. Third, I would say it's good to pay attention to context and purpose. The choice of pronunciation convention may also depend on the specific context and the purpose for learning or using ancient Greek. For example, if the primary focus is on reading and understanding ancient text, then a convention that closely aligns with the phonetics of that time, that era in which those texts were written, can be beneficial. On the other hand, if the goal is to engage in oral communication or performance of ancient Greek text, then a convention that allows for smooth and expressive speech may be more suitable, something like modern Greek. And then finally, I would say it's good to consider personal preference. I mean, ultimately, personal preference is going to play a role in choosing pronunciation. Some learners may find certain conventions more appealing or enjoyable to use, while others may prefer the historical accuracy for a specific system. And it's important to find a convention that resonates with you as an individual learner, something that can enhance your own motivation and your own, overall engagement with a language. Uh, and so, you think about it, educators may have a preference. Those who are just seeking to learn it on their own may have their own preference. And those who love history and trying to reconstruct the language in the way that is most historically accurate may be really interested in adopting a certain pronunciation. For educators, the Erasmian pronunciation has been standard, but certainly be aware that the landscape is changing. I think I would, if I were in a classroom now teaching, I would want to let my students know that Erasmian probably will likely fall away, and Koine Era, for at least biblical students, will probably take over. Among classicists, probably the Erasmian pronunciation will continue for the foreseeable future. For those who are just seeking to learn Greek, read it on their own, I think a Koine Era pronunciation is pretty easy to learn and can add confidence and command to your study of Greek. And for those who are history lovers, I mean, it's hard to beat the historical accuracy and sheer beauty of the classical restored Attic pronunciation. And so there's lots of choices here that are valid. My goal in this video is really just to highlight the landscape for you, so you understand what's going on and can make an informed decision about where you want to take your own studies. So in conclusion, the choice of a pronunciation convention for ancient Greek, it involves multiple factors, including historical accuracy, accessibility for learners, scholarly consensus, context, personal preference, and each model has its advantages and limitations. And learners should consider these factors when selecting a system that best suits their needs and their goals, whether you're a teacher or just a learner on your own. Regardless of the chosen convention, consistency and dedicated practice are the key to achieving proficiency and fluency in ancient Greek pronunciation. So at the end of the day, just choose a system and stick to it. And by doing that, you'll enjoy the language much more. I hope this was helpful. And stay tuned on this channel as we'll do more videos along these subjects. And hopefully this will be helpful in your journey for learning Greek.